Hey folks, it's mid-September and it is that time of year when I get to plant the world's most expensive spice, saffron. Saffron grows wonderfully in my Northern California Zone 9B, very hot, very dry summer Mediterranean climate. And this is my third year growing saffron. So in today's video, I'm going to dig up a pot of saffron, which I planted last year, and let it dry out over the summer and see whether they have multiplied. And then we're actually going to plant up some saffron. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. And you can expect to get blooms as quickly as 4 weeks from the date of planting. That's how fast saffron grows. So let's go ahead and dig up some saffron and see how many bulbs we get. So in this planter, I planted about a dozen bulbs last year. Let's see how many those multiplied to. Now I usually put a good thick layer of mulch over this. In fact, there was some sweet alyssum growing in this as well, so that added some nice protection to the bulbs. And let's see what we have. Gotta dig gently so I don't destroy any of the bulbs. There we go. You can see them already popping up. And these little ones, I didn't plant any little ones in this last year, so these are all new. Look right there, you can see in action that this one bulb has divided into 1, 2, 3 bulbs. All right, so I dug up a total of 62 bulbs from the original 12 that I planted. And as you can see, most of them are really, really small. So these are the only ones, these 6 are the only ones that I think will produce blossoms this year. These are maybe, and then there's a whole bunch of teeny tiny ones that probably won't produce for another 3 or 4 years. So as you can see, the return on investment is great. It's probably about 5-fold the number of bulbs compared to how many I planted, but the chances of blooms have been reduced drastically. So this year I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've actually brought in a secret weapon to help with the growth of bulbs rather than the division of bulbs. And that is, I'm going to be using a phosphorus fertilizer, and this is bone meal. So I'm going to be using this at the bottom of the bulbs before I plant them, mix them into the soil. Now know that phosphorus doesn't travel very much in the soil, so you want to put it right around the place where the roots are going to be. Okay, so I've dug out all my bulbs from all the various parts of the garden that I had planted them. And this is what I have. I've got 18 bulbs that probably will produce blossoms this year. I've got about 30 in the maybe category. And I've got literally hundreds that won't produce for at least another 3 years or so. So this is saffron's dirty little secret, folks. It is the 3rd year that I'm growing saffron, and from my initial 24 bulb investment, where every one of them produced a bloom, this year I'm going to be getting only, if I'm lucky, 18 or so blooms. So I've not regained my investment. It's been, this is the 3rd year, and maybe next year I can hope to go back to normal. Of course, by then I will have other bulbs also starting to develop, so that's a good thing. But it really takes quite a few years before you recoup your initial investment in saffron. So I'd say at this point that it's a luxury item and you grow it for fun, but are you really growing it for practical reasons? Probably not. So let's go ahead and get these planted now. I'm going to do something different this year, and I'm hoping that that will increase the size of the bulbs. Like I said, I'm going to be adding that bone meal, that phosphorus. So let's see if that makes a difference. So let me show you my potting soil and how I'm getting that thing set up. I hope you're finding this video interesting and useful in some way so far, folks, and I sure would appreciate a big thumbs up if you are. So I'm using some homemade potting soil, but really you can use anything you like. What I've got here is some potting soil that I used last year. I dumped it out and I added some compost to it. I also added some slow release fertilizer, and then I'm going to be adding this. Oh, and I also added some worm castings. I add that to everything. So the way that you apply phosphorus is really, you want it to be as close to the roots as possible. You don't want it to be too deep down. Saffron doesn't have very deep roots. It doesn't go deep down. So you want to keep it as superficial as possible. You're going to be planting the bulbs about 2 to 3 inches deep. And so I filled up the pot, but I've not filled it up to the top yet. I filled it up to the point where I know that the roots of the saffron are going to reach into. I'm going to just sprinkle a handful of phosphorus-based fertilizer here, in this case bone meal, like I said. And then I'm going to fill up another couple of inches, and then I'm going to add just a little bit more phosphorus around the bulb so that as I water it and it settles, it goes right to where it needs to be. That's it. So I worked it into the first couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches of soil. And so now let's go ahead and plant our saffron bulbs. So I'm only going to be planting my larger bulbs in these spots, but I am going to be planting all of the smaller bulbs as well. I'll just put them in some window boxes. So lay them out. I'm going to be planting 9 in this and 9 in the other. They need to be about 2 to 3 inches apart and about 2 to 3 inches deep. So pretty easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've got 7 in here. That's good enough, I think. So push it all the way down so it is about 2 or 3 inches deep. Now, this potting soil is kind of moist, but you do not want to actually water the bulbs again until they begin sprouting, because bulbs that are frequently watered do tend to rot. So I'm just going to let the moisture of the potting soil trigger the growth process. I'm going to put this somewhere shady, and it should sprout in about a couple of weeks or so. And frankly, it should produce blooms in about 4 to 6 weeks. I've had it produce blooms as soon as 4 weeks. Because, you know, when I plant these bulbs, there already is the flower in them. It is not determined by the fertility of the soil or anything like that. The bulb already knows whether it's going to produce a flower or not, and that's why the size of the bulb really, really matters. One thing to be aware of is squirrels will dig up your bulbs and eat them. So offer some kind of protection. I usually put some chicken wire over the top of the pot, and that should be good. So something like that. But yeah, watch out for that. They are tasty morsels for squirrels, rats, and other things. So my saffron's all planted up, and I've got chicken wire over it. It's sitting in this nice gazebo, nice and shaded. Follow along if you want to see updates on how my saffron is progressing. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, live green and love your greens.